You have to forgive me. I want to add a few more thoughts as a follow-up to my previous ADOS podcast. Now, I am in support of Pan-Africanism, but as I stated earlier, I think there needs to be some ground rules and some boundaries and a protocol. Okay? Now, in addition to Pan-Africanism, I want to introduce a new term into the lexicon of Afro-panmericanism. I'm going to say that again. Afro-panmericanism. One last time. Afro-panmericanism. Now, we've heard of the colonizers speaking of Pan-Americanism, but I'm going to make something that's specifically for us. Afro-Pan-Americanism. And the reason why I say that is because, like I stated in the previous podcast, those of us over here in the quote-unquote so-called Americas have maybe a little bit more in common than those who are still on the continent as well as the Caribbean, with the exception of probably maybe the Dominican Republic and Cuba. And I say that because we who are the descendants of the enslaved in these countries over here in the Americas, we never really had an opportunity to have a country. We haven't even really been in a position where our population base has made up at least half or more of the population. The only group of people who could come close to that over here on this side of the world would be the Afro-Brazilians. That's it. Their population is the second largest Afro population of any country in the entire world. The only other country that has a larger Afro population than they do is Nigeria. And even in Brazil, they still don't control the country. They don't control the politics. They don't control the economics. They don't control the resources. You know, they're still being subjugated. So I feel like we have more in common with our Afro-Pan-American brothers and sisters, a lot more to start with, than the continent and some of these other Caribbean nations. Now, once again, I'm not saying that means that we're not going to work with the Caribbeans and we're not going to work with the continent. But I think that there's maybe some better gains initially to be had over here first in the Americas than possibly some other aspects, because we have more of a similar experience and a similar history. We have more in common. We have more common ground from that aspect. Okay. And you really have to look at and question. I mean, once again, I don't want this to be something that's very divisive, but you have to look at and question with these other Caribbean nations, with the exceptions of maybe Dominican Republic and Cuba, and the continent, since they were able to have some kind of liberation, what have they been doing on those countries? What progress and gains have they been making? I understand that the enemy, I understand that the colonizer will do his best to try to keep us downtrodden. But when you have your own country, when you have the population base, when you're 90, 99%, maybe even almost 100% of the population of these nations, in modern times, when you can have guns, when you can have military craft, and when you can have a mechanized army also, I don't see how you can let these outsiders try to dictate to you and use these bribes to run your countries. That I just really don't understand. And for a number of these countries on the continent and the Caribbean to be a part, or to try to be a part of this Commonwealth thing with the British, and you have these British folks openly going around talking about Empire 2.0. So you want to say that you have liberation. You want to talk about liberation, but then you're still a part of the Commonwealth with the colonizer, your former oppressor, your still current oppressor, I would say. To me, that doesn't make sense. That would be like us, the Afro-Americans, ADOS. Let's say we get our own land, we get our own territory, but then we say, well, we still want to be under the realm of the United States. We still want to be a part of the jurisdiction of the United States, but then talk about liberation at the same time. I mean, that's kind of a contradiction. Either you're independent or you're not. Either you have liberation or you don't. And I'm not trying to castigate our brothers and sisters, but I'm really trying to inspire, especially the younger people coming up, that you have to change the politics in these countries. Okay. Just like if you look at a lot of the younger people in South Africa, where they're going around saying now, just like we would kind of say here in the United States, that Mandela and others have failed them, and that reconciliation in South Africa, just like integration here in the United States, didn't really go so well. And these previous generations maybe didn't do best for us. So now it's going to be up to these younger generations to take it the rest of the way. All right. And I would encourage that of these other countries. Quit taking money from these Europeans. Quit taking money from the World Bank. Quit letting the Chinese and these Arabs and all these foreigners and outsiders come in and rape your country of its resources and get over on you. Okay. I wouldn't let any of these outsiders, I wouldn't let these foreigners do that if I ran a country. You hear these other Americans here in the United States complain about immigrants and foreigners and talking about building walls. But then you want to let everyone come in and take your country. You know, I can understand what happens to the Afro-panmericanism in these other countries when they are the minority. In fact, in many cases, their percentages are in their country are less than our percentages inside of these borders. But when all of your politicians look like you, when all of your leaders look like you, and you still have these problems, I don't get it, you know. And I get it. Worldwide, there's a problem with the establishment, these elitists, the globalists, you know, house Negroes, Sambos, bourgeoisie, whatever you want to call them. But they're the few. You're the many. You're the majority. You know, you shouldn't allow them to stay in the power. You shouldn't allow them to rule over you. You need to take matters into your own hands. You know, another example of maybe some inspiration, look at what's going on in Haiti. Recently, Haiti, there's a lot of demonstrations. There's a lot of civil unrest. People are calling for change. It's mainly happening with younger people, people in their 40s and 30s and younger. And they're tired of these corrupt leaders in Haiti. Now, yes, over the centuries, Haiti has had a lot of bad things happen to them by outsiders, including the United States, when they got their independence. But Haiti also needs to take responsibility at the same time for corrupt leaders that they've had. So maybe the situation in Haiti right now with the civil unrest, with the demonstrations, and with the call to action, maybe in Haiti, there'll be some real change. Let's see what comes of it. Hopefully it'll be a good thing, but then hopefully we can see more of it happen in these other countries, because I wouldn't let these Europeans come in here. I wouldn't let the Chinese come up in here and set up shop. I'd be talking about China like Trump talks about China. I'd be going after China just like Trump. Okay. I wouldn't be playing that. Okay. I wouldn't be dealing with no Commonwealth business and borrowing money from these people, letting them take your resources, letting them exploit your people and exploit your land. I wouldn't let that happen. You know, a lot of these leaders in these countries are puppets, just puppets, working for the man. That's it. So I didn't really want to make this divisive, but like I said, it frustrates me to see brothers and sisters in these other countries. And I think about us, the Afro-Americans, ADOS, here in the U.S. And if we had a situation like that with our history and everything that's happened to us, those are the types of things that we're trying to work for. You get your own state and you let these people undermine you. You know, the United Nations, the white helmets. I'd kick them all out of the country. OK, you know, in similar fashion to how Ronald Reagan put it, when these government agencies and these world agencies come and say, we're here to help, you need to run. OK, I will be very fearful if the UN and the US, all these European powers, these G20 countries and the Chinese and all the rest of them, I would be very leery if they came knocking up at the door talking about, oh, we've come to help. You know, Israel, all of these countries wouldn't do it. OK, so I may have more to add later on when it pertains to ADOS. I may put together basically like a bullet list of platforms or a platform of the main issues of what a ADOS political platform, or at least what I would recommend what it should be, especially with the election coming up. And there, you know, there's always an election going on somewhere. So not only would these principles apply for a national election or the United States, they could apply in other countries. So until then, brothers and sisters across the world, shalom, shalom.